1, 2, 3.
We're here for the launch finally of the beginning of the complete street for improvements along DeKalb Avenue. This project is very, very important. It falls into the category of promises made being promises kept. There's been a lot of charrettes and community engagement around improvements to this district. It's been fits and starts around implementation and scope. We finally have a scope. We finally have allocation of funding. They've selected the contractor. We are finally getting started. This is an important corridor that connects DeKalb County to Atlanta. It connects to Stone Mountain and some other bikes and trails. So this is a very, very important corridor. This is phase one. We're looking forward to having phase two happen in the near future, but we're excited to finally have a start to a very important project.
Even though it's overcast, this is an incredibly exciting day. DeKalb Ave has been a dangerous street on the east side of Atlanta for a long, long time. And I am super excited that we're breaking ground on phase one today, making this safer for the neighborhoods that touch it on both sides, for folks who ride MARTA or who cycle down on their way to or from downtown. But I want to underscore that this is just phase one, that there is unfinished work that we have here, and it'll be important to pass a new T-SPLOS and a new infrastructure bond next spring so we can do the full project and give our residents what they deserve. It's all part of the larger, honestly, the Vision Zero of making sure that no Atlanta resident is injured or dies on our streets. And today's groundbreaking is a step in making sure that that doesn't happen again on DeKalb Ave.
This is an exciting day to be able to come out here for this groundbreaking where we are breaking ground on the DeKalb Avenue safety improvements. This project has been in the making for quite a while, and I'm glad that the community gave their input in the beginning for us to even come to this place to get this project started. And then throughout the process, they have always advocated and been very patient. But now today, we're ready to get started on this project, and how exciting it's going to be to have people that motorists that are on this road, cyclists, wheelchairs, pedestrians will be much safer on a better road that services everyone. This project specifically is about safety. A number of the projects are about creating beautification, making sure the roads are smooth. All that's important, but specifically this project is because we had this reversible lane that has been there for so long that individuals have sometimes had head-on collisions because they didn't know if it was supposed to be going east or west at this time of day. And so it's caused crashes that we can avoid by now having this to be a proper shared lane. And so then we also are going to have protected bicycle lanes that wheelchairs, bicycles, scooters, and others can utilize to stay out of the road. So this is about safety, getting people where they're going each day and where they're going in life in a safe way is going to be critical, whether they're riding MARTA or whether they're just taking a trip.
Two, three, toss.
We're here because to celebrate the groundbreaking for the first dog park in District 4, and not only in District 4 but in Southwest Atlanta, and it's right here in the Moseley Park community. So we're very excited to be here today. It's important to have a dog park for the health of the dog as well as the health of the community. There are a lot of people that they live in inner city, so there may not be enough land, let's say for a large dog, they may not have enough land for a large dog just to run around the backyard or the front yard. And so when you have that dog park, then they can bring the dog to the park and just let them have fun with other dogs. I just really want to thank the Friends of Moseley Park for all of their work over the last 4 or 5 years with their visioning plan and helping us move forward. And Park Pride has just been tremendous in regard to raising monies that have been needed. And the Parks Department, under the guidance of Doug Vaz, has just been tremendous with getting the job done, and Park Design has done a great job with taking the visioning plan and putting it in reality on paper, and then bringing it out here and putting it, making the projects work right here on the ground in this 33-acre space.
But it is an honor to serve you and to be able today to honor a great citizen, someone who's been here through the hard times, the good times, and has stayed so much an important part of what makes Kirkwood wonderful. And so this is the highest honor that the city of Atlanta can confer upon any citizen. It is a proclamation, and it is an honor of your life and your legacy. We're here today to commemorate the 100th birthday of a Kirkwood neighbor, Miss Thelma Favors.
For his work as an accomplished performer, jazz film documentarian, composer, conductor, and historian, and his commitment to jazz education. Dr. James Hardy Patterson is an institution, and he loves Atlanta, and he's given so much to Atlanta and helped us here in Atlanta to uplift and make jazz a part of our lives here in the city of Atlanta. And it was an honor and a privilege to give the proclamation to him today. It was signed by myself and all 15 members of council. And we certainly want to recognize people. We want to give them their flowers while they do. And his are overdue. We should have been proclaiming him a long time ago, but now at this festival, at this time, I think is even more appropriate that he can be with other musicians and be around the spirit and the movement of jazz around him and in the air. And I think he really appreciated it. We certainly miss coming together. We certainly miss our jazz festival, something that we look forward to every year, sort of a rite of passage for summer. But you know, the fall, this going into the fall, it's not bad, it's not as hot, but people are coming out and able to social distance and enjoy good jazz music and fellowship with family and friends and hear the great sounds of jazz. Jazz history means a lot to Atlanta. There are many things that the city builds on, and you think about what brings people to Atlanta, and jazz, and particularly all of the jazz festivals that we have, they bring visitors in from other places. And when people come, some of them want to stay because of the music. I know music brought me to Atlanta. And then some people, you know, they come and they want to continue to visit. And of course that helps our revenue, it helps our city, and it certainly helps Atlanta's brand.
Eventually, we're talking about a green space. You know, we've talked about putting a green space over there. We're here today actually celebrating a sneak peek of the opening of the Southside Trail. Several years ago, we built out the West Side Trail, and we got funding in the last 2 years to actually finish connect the West Side Trail to the Southside Trail. We're in the neighborhood of Pittsburgh, Capitol View Manor, or Dare Park. And because the community had been working so hard with this for the last 2 years and giving real community input in terms of the dream and the vision of the Southside Trail, I thought it was important that we have them come out first and do a sneak peek of all the community input they had put into it. So we've been out here walking the trail, enjoying it. This is just beautiful. It's a beautiful day. We're here at Pittsburgh Yards, which is actually officially opening up next Saturday, September the 18th. When I was with my community folks today, walking with them, they were asking so many questions, and they were so proud the people in the community, as we was walking, they said, well, Councilmember Shepherd, what about this? What's getting ready to happen here? They already saw development. We saw development going on a multi-family development right on this trail. And so what I did today is I walked with my community. I let them know that there's a commitment by myself and the city to make sure that we actually lift up the South Side. So the Beltline has been a major component of that has spurred some of that. But as I walked with my residents, I shared all the things that are going on the South Side of Atlanta. And they were very happy, they were excited. They were just they thought it was great. And I do too.
We're out here for our first official kickoff with our partners HelloFresh, Second Helpings Atlanta, and Pratt Industries as we kick off their Meals with Meaning program. Their HelloFresh nationally is going to give away over 60,000 meals a month. Here in Atlanta, we're going to be doing 800 meal kits a week. Now that ends up being about 8,000 meals because there are 2 meals for a family of 4 in each kit. So every Wednesday for the next calendar year, we're going to be distributing food to folks who need it. So folks who are in a food desert, if you've been adversely affected by COVID-19, if you're struggling to feed your family, or if you just need some additional help this week, come by. We'll make sure that you get a meal and make sure that we help ameliorate some of those problems in your home.
Today we're here in Northwest Atlanta to say goodbye to this old eyesore that has been plaguing this community for over a decade. Sierra Ridge was a drug haven, drug-infested parcel of land right here at 3202 Delmar Lane. So community members gathered here today because this is the beginning of the rehabilitation and renovation of Sierra Ridge. Over 10 years ago, there were over 300 code enforcement violations, over 300 calls to 911, and we knew that we had to do something about it. It is very important that they have a safe, sanitary environment. We will be working with the owners of this property and the developers to make sure that the quality of life for all residents exists in Northwest Atlanta.
This is Carla Smith. This is the zoning committee meeting. I'm the vice chair of zoning. Councilmember Faroki is out on paternity leave. So I want to welcome everyone here this morning. Ms. Lindo, are you there?
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair.
Perfect. Will you please go ahead and do the roll call?
Yes, we have Councilmember Amir Faroki, Councilmember Andrea O'Boone, present. Councilmember Marcy Collier Overstreet, present. Councilmember Howard Schuh.
Aye.
Councilmember Andre Dickens.
Here.
Councilmember Cleta Winslow.
Present.
Councilmember Smith. Madam Chair, we do have a quorum of members present.
Excellent. Thank you. Will you go ahead and read our remote meeting statement now?
Yes, good morning. Today's zoning committee meeting will be conducted remotely as advertised and in accordance with Georgia Code Section 50-14-1. The meeting will be conducted in conformance with Robert Rules of Order and the Rules of Council as authorized by the City Code. The public may access the meeting conference bridge toll-free by dialing 877-579-6743 and entering conference ID number 831-599-1256. This information was also provided on the Friday, September 24th public meeting notice. The public may also view the meeting on Channel 26, the Council's homepage at citycouncil.atlanta.ga.gov, Facebook and Twitter pages at ATL Council, and the Council's YouTube channel. Today's meeting agenda was also published and made available on Friday, September 24th via the city's website at atlantacitygA.iqm2.com. In addition, the public was able to submit comments that were unrelated to zoning items that have or will go before the Zoning Review Board via voicemail at 404-330-6035 yesterday between the hours of 4 and 7 p.m. These comments will be played during the public comment portion of this meeting. All persons present on the remote council meeting conference bridge are requested to please mute your phones and speakers. Meeting participants wishing to speak must be acknowledged by the committee chair. Thank you all in advance for your cooperation.
Thank you, Ms. Lindo. Next is the adoption of the agenda. Now, we have a presentation today, and it is on the agenda before the held items. We have a couple of held items that need to come off. So I'd like to do the presentation after the held items. So if I could get a motion to approve the agenda as I just said.
Second, Overstreet.
Second. Okay, Andre, that was you, correct?
Wrong.
Okay, let's open the vote, Ms. Lindo.
A moment. The vote is open, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Will everyone please vote?
Okay, Ms. Boone? Ms. Boone,
Yes.
I'm going to get a voice vote from you, please.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Winslow?
In favor.
Thank you. Now we can close the vote. So that is,
Madam Chair.
okay, 7 yeas, 0 nays. That agenda is adopted. So now I will take a motion to approve the minutes.
Madam Chair, just
So
correction,
moved.
that was 6 yeas.
Oh, 6 yeas, sorry. Okay, and
So moved, Dickens.
thank you, Dickens. We will accept that. And do we have a second?
Second, Shook.
You're on the system, Mr. Shook. Let's let somebody that's not on the system.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Winslow?
In favor.
There we go. Okay. Now let's open the vote.
That is open, Madam Chair.
I knew what you meant. Okay. So, Ms. Boone. Ms. Boone, we're approving the minutes, please. That was a yay. Okay. So that's 6 yeas, 0 nays. So those minutes stand approved. Now we have public comment. We have one public comment. Ms. Lindo, if you will have them play that, please.
One moment, Madam Chair.
Greetings, zoning committee, council members, and staff. And special greetings to you, citizens and voters of Atlanta. Ben Howard, Senior Advocate, Public Policy Analyst. Neighborhood Planning Unit R falls within the jurisdiction of Council District 11, Council District 12, and both 3 Council Districts at large. Some years ago, the NPUR 9, led by Renette L. Scott, Corliss Clare, Ricardo Jacobs, and Antonita Robinson, came to City Council and essentially said how does government get rid of naysayers and still appear to be a democracy in the eyes of the public? When the law department was consulted, op-eds were cooled off, and out came a new rule. 2 strikes, you're out. Annoy the rulers once, you'll be warned. Annoy the rulers twice, you're out of the NPUR meeting for that day. So Anita's letter post says, let the people talk about the Cascade Nature Preserve being cared for by a community conservancy instead of by a lone council member, and let the people talk about more programming for senior citizens at Adams Park. The NPUR 9 says, not on our agenda. 2 strikes, you're out. And when Ben Howard says, let the people talk about the Campbellton Cascade Corridor and the thousands of dollars allocated for beautification where eyesores still persist. And let the people talk about quality of life in the city's senior zones. The NPUR 9 says, not on our agenda. 2 strikes, you're out. And when Ron Secure says, let the people talk about the impact of gentrification upon the lives of the children, and let the people talk about public safety and crime, the NPUR 9 says, 2 strikes, you're out. No such talk. Not on the narrow agenda of Antonita Robinson, Clovis Square, Ricardo Jacobs, Renette L. Scott, Alvis Weiss, Allison Hathaway, Cheryl Brown, Agent X, Sherry Williams, and the NPUR 9 cohorts and cheerleaders. Never on the NPUR 9 agenda.
Okay, I think that's over. Now we are to G. We have our Director of Office and Zoning and Development, Ms. Kieta Holmes here. Director Holmes, will you go ahead and read G1, please?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, council members. Item number 1, 21C0124, a communication from council members Howard Shook, District 7, J.P. Maxapite, District 8, and Matt Westmoreland, Post 2 at large, appointing Ms. Sherry Gates McGaughy to serve as a member of the Zoning Review Board. This appointment is for a term of 2 years.
Okay, is she on the line, Ms. Lindo?
Yes, she is, Madam Chair.
Are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, excellent. Okay, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to serve on this committee.
Great. Good morning, everyone. I have been involved in zoning since about 2000. I have been on the Payson Civic Association board for most years, not every year, but probably except for 2 or 3. I'm currently the VP of Community Planning for that board. I've also served in the past as the Executive Vice President and the Secretary. I've been on NPUA since 2016 and have been very active. I have argued zoning issues on our behalf in front of the DZA. I am an attorney by training. I have been practicing since 1992. Went to the University of Georgia undergrad and law school. I am a corporate attorney with many years of experience at a major law firm, and then also I was in-house with the Weather Channel for many years, and currently have my own practice where I represent a lot of companies around town, Global Payments, Curtis Simmons Betting, as well as some other television and entertainment networks. I am a member of Leadership Atlanta, class of 2015, and very involved in the city, involved in my church, Peachtree Road Methodist, where I've served on the Board of Trustees, and I have been just very concerned about zoning and what happens in the city, and I would love to get more involved and be able to make a bigger impact.
That's a lot. That's a lot, Ms. McGoy. Okay. Do we have a motion, or do y'all want me to make the motion to approve?
Move approval, Madam Chair. Winslow.
Thank you. I get a second, please?
Overstreet, second.
Okay. All right. Go ahead and open the vote.
The vote is open, Madam Chair.
Okay. Ms. Boone?
Yes.
Mr. Dickens?
I did mine electronically.
Oh, you're on the system. Perfect. Okay, good. All right, so we have 6 yeas, 0 nays. Ms. McGoy, it is an honor to have you here today, and good luck on the Zoning Review Board.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, goodbye. All right, so now we are to items held in committee. Ms. Holmes, let's do items 4, 5, and 6, please. We'll take them individually, though.
Yes, ma'am. Item number 4, 21-00283, Z2137, an amended ordinance by Zoning Committee to rezone from single-family residential Beltline overlay and heavy industrial Beltline overlay to mixed residential commercial conditional Beltline overlay for property located at 1010 and 1040 West Marietta, 949 and 949 Herndon Street, 949 Herndon Street Rear, 957 Herndon Street, 963 and 973 Herndon, 963, 1054, 1060, 1062, 1064, 1070 Baylor Street, 1054, 1057, 1060, 1061, and 1064 Reynolds, and 1065 Reynolds Street, and 1069 also 1071 and 1070 Reynolds Street, 1073, 1074, 1075, 1076, 1081, 1082, 1085, 1086 Reynolds Street, 1056 Niles, 1058 also 1060, 1062, 1066, 1068, 1072, 1076, 1082, 1086 Niles Avenue. Staff recommendation, MP recommendation, ZRB recommendation, approval conditional.
Madam Chair?
She's either muted or dropped off, so we'll have to give her a moment.
I was muted. I'm sorry. Y'all are right. Thank you for telling me. So the motion on this will be favorable as amended. Ms. Winslow, would you like to make that motion?
Like to make a motion to approve.
Okay, as amended. Ms. Boone?
As amended. Yes, ma'am.
Boone. Okay, perfect. If you'll open the vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. At 6 yeas, 0 nays, that item is favorable as amended.
Great, thank you. We'll let it take that course. Now, Ms. Holmes.
Item number 5, 21-00285, Z2139, a substitute ordinance by Zoning Committee to rezone from single-family residential to light industrial conditional for property located at 3393 Jonesboro Road Southeast. Staff and ZRB recommendation approval conditional of the substitute. MP recommendation approval conditional.
Okay, Ms. Winslow or Ms. Boone, the motion is favorable on substitute. Would one of y'all like to make it, please?
Move approval as substituted.
And Ms. Boone, do you want to second that?
Second, Boone.
Thank you. Let's open the vote, Ms. Lindo.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. This is favorable on substitute. We will let it take that course. Now we are to number 6, Ms. Holmes.
Item 6, 20-1641, Z2059, a substitute ordinance by Zoning Committee to rezone from single-family residential to two-family residential conditional for property located at 910, 922, and 928 Lindbergh Drive Northeast. Staff and ZRB recommendation approval conditional of the substitute. NPU recommendation denial.
I will make a motion to adverse this. Do I have a second?
Second. Boom.
Thank you. Let's open the vote. Ms. Winslow, how do you vote on this one?
In favor.
Thank you.
The vote is open, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Will everyone please vote?
And Ms. Winslow voted with a yay verbally. Thank you.
The vote is closed, Madam Chair.
Okay, we have 6 yeas, 0 nays. This paper is adversed. Okay, so now we are to, Ms. Holmes, do you want to introduce the presenters for the presentation?
No, ma'am. Commissioner Tim Keene is present and will be doing the introduction.
Oh, okay. Mr. Keene, are you here? Caleb, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Madam Chair, can you hear me?
I can hear you. So why don't you introduce yourself and go ahead and get started with your presentation.
Thank you. My name is Tim Keene, Commissioner of City Planning. Just brief introductory remarks for me, and then Caleb Brassico with TSW will lead the presentation by our consultant team on the zoning rewrite, where we are with that process and some upcoming public meetings. I just wanted to provide some context. Some of you will certainly know this, but others might not. This process actually began back in 2015, believe it or not, when we hired a group that evaluated our current zoning ordinance and completed something that was called the zoning ordinance assessment. Some called it the diagnostic. And that report on the evaluation of our zoning ordinance was completed at the end of 2016. That assessment recommended some changes that we make to the zoning ordinance relatively quickly, the so-called quick fixes, which were brought to City Council and adopted in 2 phases. The first phase was adopted in May of 2018, and then the second phase of the quick fixes were adopted in January of 2019. It was a fairly long list of amendments that resulted from those zoning changes. Included in them were the accessory dwelling ordinance that we now have, and the missing middle housing, the MRMU district, was included within those amendments, as well as changes to our parking requirements and other things. So we started with the zoning ordinance assessment 2016, which resulted in some amendments to the current zoning ordinance that occurred in May of 2018 and January of 2019. And then we also began a process of hiring a team to help us with the overall zoning rewrite, which is what we're discussing today, and Caleb will present information to you about. This overall rewrite of the zoning ordinance will take several years. This is not a fast endeavor. Other cities have attempted such efforts like this, taken between 3 and 5 years. You'll see in Caleb's presentation, we're still a couple or few years away from a specific recommendation that will come back to council. So this is something that isn't done often when you look at changing your zoning ordinance entirely. Theoretically, we would be rezoning the entire city. So it's a big, significant endeavor that takes time and has a lot of public involvement, of course. So I just wanted to provide that context that this is a process that started with the assessment of our zoning ordinance, resulted in some amendments to the current ordinance, and now we're in the kind of final phase, which will take time, of rewriting the entire ordinance. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll let Caleb Brassico, who's leading the consultant team, take the presentation from here.
Sounds good. And Caleb?
Thank you very much, Commissioner Keene, and good morning, Madam Chair and City Council Zoning Committee. I'm Caleb Rosico with TSW, and we'll be giving you a brief presentation on an update of where we are in the process. So if you could proceed to slide 2, please. Our primary purpose today is to, as I mentioned, provide the Zoning Committee with an update on some of the work that we've been doing today. I will be providing the majority of the presentation, but Content Terry, who's our Public Engagement Manager, will also be providing some information on the appropriate outreach process. And then we will be going through details on some of the important public outreach events that are going to be coming up, and then finally can conclude with any discussion or questions that the Zoning Committee may have. So next, and then next. So as Commissioner Keene mentioned, the consultant team is led by myself. I am a local Atlanta resident with the firm of TSW, and we are handling all of the project management, policy considerations, and really day-to-day operations of the rewrite. But because this is a very complex, very long-term effort, our team does include a variety of technical experts. We have really who I consider to be the nation's leaders in writing clear, user-friendly zoning codes. They're called Code Studio. They're out of Austin, Texas. And they are going to be our partner in actually thinking about approaches that may be appropriate for the Atlanta community to consider, and then doing a lot of the codification work. We also have a design firm out of Boston called Util, who has been helping us, as you'll see in a moment, understand how some of the physical features of Atlanta could inform the zoning ordinance rewrite. And then, of course, no zoning ordinance rewrite would be complete without a very significant legal team. And so we have Bob Zeckler and Jeff Paymore, two people who I believe everyone on the council should know are local zoning attorneys, very, very familiar with the city code today, the legal precedents associated with zoning in Atlanta, and they will be helping us throughout. And then in outreach, we have two primary team members as well. One is Placemakers. They are a Decatur-based sort of engagement firm. And then finally, Content Consulting. And I will allow Content to introduce herself. Content, are you there?
Okay, can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes,
fantastic. Thank you. I apologize for that. This is Content Terry with Content Consulting, and as Caleb mentioned, we'll be managing public outreach. Just for those of you who are unfamiliar with myself or my firm, Content Consulting is Atlanta-based, community engagement and city planning firm, minority-owned. We are most known for a lot of the work that we did for the City of Atlanta's 2018 Atlanta Transportation Plan update, where we manage public engagement for that. We do a lot of consulting and outreach work for MARTA, where we're heavily involved in the community, and also with the Atlanta Beltline, where we've touched every neighborhood that surrounds the Atlanta Beltline. With that, we've extended our tools and resources to reach the public, meeting them where they are to ensure that everyone that's involved in our planning processes have an opportunity to participate in any way that they'd like. So thank you for this opportunity, and I'll explain to you our outreach approach when the slide presents itself. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Content. And so that concludes the core team. And then finally, because we know that there are going to be a variety of issues that may come up over the years, we do have a couple of other technical experts on our team. One is a local architecture firm called 8 Village, who will be available to help us as needed. We also have a local engineering firm, Pond & Company, if we have any engineering issues to look at. And then South Face, who is a leader, both a local and national leader in sustainability as well. And then finally, a local gentleman, Aaron Fortner with Canvas Planning, who was actually part of the diagnostic process that Commissioner King mentioned before. He is also available to help us throughout the process as needed. So next. Next. So in terms of the process, before I go into detail, I did want to really start with really some perspective. The fact that zoning ordinances are very long-term commitments on the parts of cities. Our current code has been with us over about 40 years now. And because of that, it is extremely important that your zoning ordinance aligns with the vision of what your city should be, your city policies, your city plans, your city aspirations. And so in terms of this particular process, one of the things that has been very important to us is recognizing that the zoning ordinance rewrite is part of a much larger process that has been identified, a framework really, in the Atlanta city design. And so we are focused on the zoning piece, but we are very, very aware and guided by many of the principles of the Atlanta city design, starting with the 5 core values of equity, nature, process, access, and ambition, looking again at the particular action strategies within that document, and then other specific proposals that have come out of that. And that, of course, includes very closely by reference the comprehensive plan, the comprehensive development plan, which is the policy framework of all of this. And so I wanted to give a little bit of overview that this zoning ordinance rewrite is very, very, very guided by a lot of the previous work that the city has done. So next. Now, zoning ordinance rewrites are very long-term efforts, as Commissioner King mentioned. Most of the cities that have done these processes have taken between 3 and 5 years. And therefore, the proposal for Atlanta is going to be likely a 4-year endeavor, one that we began in fall of 2020 with a process that I'll talk about. And then we'll conclude, hopefully, with some legislation for the council's consideration by 2024, the summer of 2024. Now, one thing that's very important to recognize in this process is that we are going to focus first and foremost on a broad framework that goes from general and conceptual to very specific over time. And so we've organized a process that begins with sort of aspirations, ideas, policies, and then works through an iterative effort to get to specific regulations. And so that is through 4 phases. Phase 1, next slide, is where we have been today. Next slide again. Phase 1 was an effort undertaken by the consultant team to first look at how to align the zoning ordinance with the city envisioned by the Atlanta city design. And so that involved carefully reading that document, carefully rereading the comprehensive plan, carefully rereading other city policies to make sure that the entire consultant team was familiar with what some of the unique attributes of Atlanta were. Additionally, phase 1 is about finalizing the rewrite process, determining what kind of meetings we're going to be having, what kind of outreach effort we're going to work on to the extent that that's possible given the pandemic. And then very importantly, to look at existing patterns to make sure that whatever comes out of this zoning rewrite, whatever approach to the code we take, that it is truly guided by a deep respect and appreciation for what Atlanta is today, for the existing patterns of our many diverse neighborhoods, for the existing patterns of our business districts, for the existing things, the existing physical features that make Atlanta what it is today. Next. And so as part of that process, we have looked very closely at a variety of documents. I mentioned Atlanta City Design and its supplement, but we've also read through the zoning ordinance again and looked at the zoning maps again. We've looked at the zoning diagnostic, as Commissioner King mentioned before, and then very importantly have been briefed, updated, and reviewed the various other regulatory initiatives that the city has worked on. Next. And part of the key purpose of this phase one effort has been to really think of how we take that framework of the Atlanta City design and look at zoning through that lens. And so we have read the code and we have looked at how all of the different regulations within it relate to the substance or standards of Atlanta City design, how the procedures support or do not support city design, and then how the format supports or does not support the Atlanta City design. Next. From that, phase one has also focused on developing a public outreach process. Content, would you like to speak briefly on this slide?
Sure. Thank you, Caleb. We are extremely aware that zoning is a hot topic in pretty much everyone's household these days. Outreach is extremely important as a part of this process, and so we've taken a couple of steps in ensuring that it is as transparent and inclusive as possible. We launched our outreach efforts with the development of a website. It is accessible. It is at atlzoning.com. Again, the zoning rewrite website is atlzoning.com. In addition, we have been working closely with the City of Atlanta in the comprehensive development plan process to develop a comprehensive stakeholder list where we have identified numerous stakeholders, including all the MPUs, neighborhood associations, various advocacy groups, and we've also included developers in our stakeholder database because they're doing the majority of the construction space. With that stakeholder list, it will continue to grow and build as this process continues on so that we can keep people actively updated and informed in the process. As Caleb mentioned, we'll be kicking off our public engagement and outreach efforts within the next few weeks with a series of events called Idea Lab. And over a course of 4 meetings, which will be virtual, we will provide what I like to call an overview of zoning or zoning 101, where we'll tackle several different topics and provide participants an opportunity to learn a little about zoning, not necessarily as it relates to updating the code, but zoning in general, so that people have a foundation to build upon as they continue with us through the course of these next 3 to 4 years as we rewrite the zoning code. Constituents, neighbors, various stakeholders will have an opportunity to engage in this process, meet with planners, and actually roll up their sleeves and help inform the zoning rewrite through a series of meetings that we plan to host around the city. So every meeting that we host will go on rotation through 4 quadrants of the city, and we anticipate hosting approximately 40 meetings over the next several years where people can engage either virtually or in person. And then additional to that, as I mentioned, we're very focused in meeting people where they are. So we will identify some key events throughout the city where we'll set up a pop-up and provide materials and opportunities for people to give us feedback at various milestones through this process as well. I'll go into a little more about how we plan to get the word out about upcoming meetings in a future slide, and I'll pass the presentation back over to Caleb.
Great. Thank you very much. Could we go to slide number 13? Great. So as Content mentioned, most of the work in phase one, in fact, all of the work in phase one has been very behind the scenes. It has been about the consultant team working with the Office of Zoning Development and the Department of City Planning to analyze the existing codes, to understand how we were going to tackle the rewrite effort, and to think about potential tools for later public consideration. And so as we get into phase two, however, this is where we begin to enter the public process. Phase two is about taking the technical work that has been performed both as part of the original 2015 diagnostic and the subsequent phase one amendment of it, and sharing it with the Atlanta community, having conversations about what it means, and beginning to determine how we can go forward with creating a zoning code that reflects the values within those documents. And so in phase two, next slide, our goal is to work first to identify alternatives for the greater Atlanta community to consider that begin to address some of the issues that have been identified in the phase one work and in the existing diagnostic. And so what we're going to be doing as part of this process is to think about what are potential strategies for how we might change the zoning ordinance that may or may not address certain city needs. And then through the public outreach process, we're going to determine which of those options may be most suited for Atlanta versus others. From that, we will then develop the final coding approach, and only after that is done, begin the actual zoning rewriting process. So next slide. So as Content mentioned earlier, during the phase one work, we have begun to see very clearly that there are a lot of topics, a lot of areas of regulation that warrant both additional community information sharing, but also additional community conversation. And so the first outreach effort as part of the zoning ordinance rewrite is going to be what we're calling a series of idea labs, which were previously called plenaries. The idea of the idea labs, as Content mentioned, is to host a series of conversations that include a presentation by a local or national expert in a topic that directly or indirectly could shape the zoning ordinance, and then to have a discussion during that meeting about which ideas may work, which ideas may not work, and really to gauge the level of interest. We like to think of the idea labs as really about being food for thought. And so we are going to intentionally propose some ideas that we know are probably not good fits for Atlanta, and others that we think are probably very good fits. The idea is to make sure that we look at a range of options and then determine what kind of regulations may or may not be appropriate for the city. And these will be based on local knowledge of the city. These will be based on national best practices. These will be based on some of the ideas that have emerged from the diagnostic phase. So next slide. Content will tell you a little bit about that effort, because it is going to be very publicly shared starting this week with some of the MPU agendas that are going to be coming out. So Content, would you like to share a little bit about them?
Sure. So in regards to marketing and advertising the Idea Labs, as I mentioned, we'd like for it to be as inclusive and participatory as possible. So we'll start with, and I believe, I'm sorry, Caleb, I don't think we're on my slide.
Are we on slide 21?
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Forgive me. So, slide. You're correct, Content. I apologize. So, in terms of slides, slide 16, the Idea Labs are going to begin November 2nd through December 14th. We are going to be running a series of 4 live meetings that will run from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. and are going to provide a series of participation opportunities. Those are going to be virtual, meaning that folks will be able to join in through Zoom or dial in and listen. They will also be streamed on the project's and Department of City Planning's Facebook and YouTube pages, and then, of course, posted on the project website. Slide 17. And so I think we may have a Council, could you, are we on the slide that shows the Idea Lab number 1? Is that correct?
You're going to see it just a little bit delayed.
Okay.
So I think it just popped up. Is this the slide you're looking for?
Great. Slide number 17. Thank you. Thank you. My apologies. So the first Idea Lab number 1, is going to be held on November 2nd of this year. At this lab, we are going to provide a welcome and background where Director Holmes and myself will share with the community a little bit of overview on the process, where we've been, what we've been working on, and really create expectations for the kind of public engagement effort, the kind of process that's going to be associated with the rewrite. Additionally, however, at this meeting, we are going to have a very exciting presentation of what we're calling Existing Atlanta Patterns. And what this is going to be about is sharing the work that some of our team members have done at mapping and analyzing the physical features that make Atlanta, Atlanta. And so our team members have identified a series of representative neighborhoods, if you will, across the city. And sometimes these are official neighborhoods in terms of neighborhood boundary, and sometimes they're actually combined. But we've identified a series of 19 study areas across the city, and we've looked at these study areas in terms of a variety of topics that could introduce influence zoning. Some of those include how well do they conform with the current zoning, how do they not conform to this current zoning, but this is really about understanding what the physical patterns of the neighborhood are. And they go all the way from city scale to the neighborhood scale to the block scale and even the building scale, so that we will have a very thorough understanding of what the physical features are that actually define the Atlanta today that we know and love. Next slide. The second Idea Lab will be held on November 9th. This Idea Lab will be about 2 very current topics. The first one is issues of sustainability. And this is going to be a very broad topic presented by South Faith and Robert Reed, where there's a conversation about what does it mean, or what could it mean to have a sustainable zoning ordinance? How could we incorporate various provisions into that? The second part of that Idea Lab is actually going to be about looking at lessons that Atlanta and other cities have learned from COVID-19 and the sort of change of how we live, work, and play based on that. And so that will be a national expert out of New Mexico talking about what trends are occurring because of the pandemic, trends about how we code, how do we live, how do we work, how do we play. The third Idea Lab, next slide, is going to be focused on issues of urban ecology and mobility. So at this particular Idea Lab, South Face again will be presenting with content on what does urban ecology mean to Atlanta. That will build upon the Atlanta City Design Nature work and present a series of ideas for the community to consider. Additionally, John Funny with Bryce Consulting Group will be presenting an Idea Lab focused on thinking about issues of mobility and accessibility. And so those will be held in November 16th. And then the final Idea Lab, next slide, is going to be held in early December 14th. This Idea Lab, in many cases, in many ways, is going to be one of the most current, in that it's going to be focused on how can zoning codes and how can zoning regulations code to preserve the existing physical characters of place. And so our national coding team members, Code Studio out of Austin, Texas, will be presenting materials on what other cities have done to ensure that zoning ordinance rewrites really reflect the existing patterns of communities, both in Atlanta and other cities. And then finally, that Idea Lab will conclude with a presentation focused on what we're calling unlocking residual space, which is really about how do we make better use of land in our cities for things like open space or things like housing? How do we ensure that quality urban design, which is so central to so much of what the city of Atlanta has done over the past 20 years, how is that incorporated into the zoning ordinance? Next slide. And so I'm going to turn it over to Content to talk a little bit about the notification push associated with these efforts. Content?
Yes, thank you, Caleb. So we intend to start notifying the public actually this week in regards to the Idea Lab. The Idea Lab registration information will be provided on the upcoming MPU agenda. Can log on to our website and access the registration to participate in one or all three of the Idea Labs, starting once those agendas are released. In addition to that, we understand that we alone can't be the main conduit for disseminating information. So we are relying heavily on our relationships with the partner organizations by launching a partner campaign. We are identifying key stakeholders in the community, advocacy groups, neighborhood groups, organizations to help push this information out, where we'll be providing them with collateral materials that they can disseminate either digitally or print to share the message. As always, we'll do an extensive e-blast out to our distribution list, but then also we encourage each council member to assist us in this effort as well, and providing information in your newsletters that would assist us with making sure that your local constituents are aware and can participate in this process. And we'll provide you with that, with all of the collateral materials that you would need to do as well. We will rely heavily on a social media campaign. We've developed partnerships with local influencers who have a large reach in social media to spread the word and encourage some of the non-traditional constituents who would normally not participate in this process and hopefully encourage them to do so. Just to give you an example, we realize that there are a couple of groups that tend to not participate, and we're going to make an concerted effort to include them in the process. And that list of groups includes small businesses, the renter community, residential rental community, Native Atlantans, educational and faith-based institutions, in addition to creatives, those who are in the arts and entertainment industry. We will follow traditional protocols by the city and provide press releases and media alerts to spread the word. And as I mentioned, the MPU planners will assist us in spreading the word at the upcoming MPU meetings. In regards to boots on the street and having a more grassroots approach to get the word out, we are identifying some canvassing opportunities where we can conduct some literature drops as well as placing signage to advertise the upcoming Idea Lab. In addition, we're working with Department of Watershed Management to post a advertisement in the next utility bill for all local residents that receive the bills that will advertise the Idea Labs as well. So since this is our first major outreach initiative, we're tackling quite a few different efforts, a diverse group of tools that we'll be using to spread the word. And it is our hope that as time passes, we'll identify some additional opportunities. And then I'd like to wrap this up by saying that we're also having conversations with local community partners to see if it's feasible for us to host viewing parties of the Idea Lab at their facilities. And once those are solidified, we will also be making you aware of those as well. All right. Caleb, I'd like to pass it back to you.
Thank you. Slide 22, please. And so, as Content mentioned, the Idea Labs are going to run through the end of this year and are really about educating and sharing ideas about zoning in general, not specific zoning proposals, with the Atlanta community to get their feedback. Based on that and the outreach we receive, as well as our technical work, by early next year, likely January or February, we will then have a specific proposal for the city of Atlanta for how to tackle the full zoning ordinance rewrite. And this is not going to be a fully written draft. In fact, nothing will be written at this time. But what this is going to entail is coming up with a detailed recommendation for how the new ordinance should be organized, with a preliminary table of contents for how all of the different parts of the code will be addressed. It will also include a methodology for how do we test ideas that may be emerging, test them both in terms of on physical properties, but also through the outreach process. And then, of course, there is a great amount of legal work that is also going to be undertaken and is actually ongoing with the law department about how do we make sure that this rewrite conforms with all of the statutory requirements, and especially how do we think about things like conditions of rezoning or nonconformity or vesting. And so that strategy, which will really lay the foundation for the actual writing piece of the code, is intended to be wrapped up by early next year. Next. And so the final part of phase 2 will be to present that preliminary strategy with the Atlanta stakeholders. And as Content mentioned earlier, we have structured this effort in such a way that public engagement opportunities will hopefully be occurring in 4 parts of the city, 4 quadrants of the city, so that you can attend the physical location that is most convenient to you. However, based on whatever the state of COVID is by then, obviously the team will revert to fully digitally if necessary in order to encourage public safety. Now, these workshops are going to be focused on potential alternatives for various ideas that will be determined as part of the zoning ordinance and will be, in fact, topic focused. And so the idea is we may determine that there needs to be a strategy for how we can allow neighborhoods to customize zoning regulations, as an example. There would then be a workshop or a session at the workshop focused on that, focused on looking at what other cities have done, focused on sharing potential options that may work in Atlanta, but at a very, very high level. The workshops are intended to discuss zoning at a conceptual level without actually having to write any of the language. Again, if you think back to my preliminary diagram, we'd like to go from general to consensus and only at the end to the actual writing part of the process. So next slide. So that is really a conclusion of where we are today and where we will be going for the next couple of months. I truly appreciate the committee giving us the time to present, and would love to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Do we have any questions? Just go ahead and speak up. I'm not going to make you press your speaker button.
Shook with the question.
Okay.
So this is the original team members, the ones that were originally contracted to do the work, and that they're still on the project. Is that right?
Yes, Councilman Shook.
Okay. So no one's died of old age. That's promising.
No.
Here's a question, and it may take a little research. That's fine if you don't know it off the top of your head. What are the sunk costs to date on this project?
I actually do not know. Director Holmes or Commissioner Keene, do you have information on that? How much the city has spent to date on a variety of efforts?
I can get that to Councilman Shook in just a moment.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't expect people to know that off the top of your head, but I'm sure some of us are interested in what we've spent to date, as well as the estimated total budget to bring this project home. So I'll await that information, but thank you, Madam Chair. That's it.
Okay, Ms. Overstreet, I think I may have heard you. Do you want to go next?
Yes, and I did have on my speaker button, so I appreciate that. Listen, I have a few questions, but as I listened to the presentation, they were being answered. I am absolutely thrilled that the conversation today focuses on timing and timeline and being intentional about slowing down this conversation and reaching everyone. And I'd like to join in on helping reach everyone, because right now the narrative for this particular zoning rewrite from the way you're calling it today is very scary to the communities, especially. I like how you called the legacy community the Native Atlantans. I heard that too. It's scary, and it feels unapproachable in the way that it seems like it started off. So I am happy to hear today that there is a concerted plan and effort to manage expectations, to try to help with the narrative so that we can actually listen to what you're saying, because right now everyone is pushing back, probably including me. Some kind of way, this whole zoning conversation turned into us changing the CDP. So I just want to be clear about that, I'd like to hear from Commissioner Keene and everyone that this particular, eliminating single-family home zoning is not an issue that we need to discuss for the CDP, the current CDP that we have to vote on before the end of the year. That's a question.
Can anyone answer that one? I think I might be able to answer a little bit. I know some of the legislation.
So Councilmember, I really would like to hear from the planning department about it.
Okay.
It's important that they speak on that.
Okay.
I mean, we're still getting 100 emails a day about it. So I'd like planning to speak publicly about that.
I think they sent an email out the other day telling us that they're going to postpone it.
I'm sorry,
okay.
Madam Chair. I'm sorry,
that
Madam
just needs to be vocalized. It needs to be in more than just our email.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair and Councilmember Overstreet. This is Kieta Holmes with the Office of Zoning Development. I'm not sure if Commissioner Keene is still on the line, but I can give you an update regarding Z2173. I think it's the paper that you're speaking of with regard to the proactive rezoning that Councilmember Faroki introduced. Is that the paper you're talking? Yeah, okay. Yes. So last week, Councilmember Faroki, Commissioner Keene, and Josh Humphreys, who's the Director of Office of Housing and Community Development, sent out email communication to all the affected MPUs, stating that legislation specifically would be held until the next early 2022, so that more community engagement could take place around that particular piece of legislation. That piece of legislation, as you know, was introduced prior to the zoning ordinance rewrite, and it's in concert with the zoning ordinance rewrite, but it is a separate initiative as it was introduced separately before. But again, Councilmember Faroki and Commissioner Keene did meet last week and did provide a notice to all of the affected MPUs of that proactive rezoning that it would be held until early 2022.
Okay. Thank you so much for, speaking that here at the zoning committee. That's important. We really are still receiving lots of emails and lots of voicemails from very concerned and afraid of, Atlanta citizens. And it's important that we let them know that that's not something that we are forcing through. So today, this conversation around the different phases and the very intentional timeline and the outreach that city planning plans to implement is extremely important. So the portion that I liked the most was the fact that you're already planning to have in the next utility bill, probably watershed, the whole phase lab rollout. That's wonderful. I have a question about that right quick. Is there going to be a telephone number, not just someone that can tell a person that calls in what email address, what website to go to, but is there going to be an RSVP or informational telephone number that someone can call to get more information if they need it at the last minute?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. For the zoning ordinance rewrite, there is a phone number, there is an email address, as well as there is the actual zoning ordinance website itself. And at any time, if none of those three vehicles work for anyone, any person from the community can always reach out directly to the Office of Zoning and Development or to the Department of City Planning, and we will address any questions or concerns that are presented.
Okay. So for the Idea Lab, let's say someone wants to call that telephone number at 10 at night. They'll leave a message for city planning and someone will call them back about it?
No one will call them back, but we will, if there is a question that has to be for them to come back, for them to be contacted directly, we will contact them. It is a voicemail, and we will check the voicemail periodically.
Okay. And, I asked because, in my district, I have lots of hard-to-reach residents, and they don't have email addresses. They don't pull up websites. They're not on Facebook, but they've been able to navigate Zoom lately. But they may need those numbers to plug into their cell phones or whatever, and so they may need calls back. They really do still dial numbers, and they have landlines. So a robocall might be nice, to add. Believe it or not, they still like robocalls. A lot of people don't like them, but we have a lot of people that get pertinent information from the city via robocall in Southwest Atlanta. So just trying to get the details so that when they ask me the questions, I'll be able to give them the information, because this really is going to be a lot to digest. And right now, everyone is just trying to protect their quality of life and the character of their communities, making sure that they don't have
4 houses going up next to them on a Legacy Street. And I understand that totally. So I'll be working to make sure that I get as much information as possible that you all are going to disseminate to the council so that we can spread the word best we can with our community via the newsletters and while we're at our NPU meetings and what have you. But okay, so thank you for the presentation, and looking forward to a continuous dialogue and interchange about this huge effort that city planning is taking on. And Madam Chair, I yield back, Madam Chair.
I think Mr. Shook is next.
Yeah, I was briefly kind of piggyback on Ms. Overstreet. I was stunned to hear this potential idea that because a couple of people sat down and agreed, we might continue this until next year. Well, these pieces of legislation have been introduced. We've heard public feedback ad nauseum. It's all negative. I don't know if some of us have to hear no 10,000 times to understand that they're hearing no. I'm ready to go. I'm going to give very serious thought to voting on these at the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Madam Chair?
Yes.
I do have a response to Mr. Shook's previous question.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
The full contract amount for the zoning ordinance rewrite is $2 million. And to date, the contractor has billed for $334,317.29.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? All right. Well, we are to the end of the agenda, so I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second by Dickens.
Thank you, Mr. Dickens. We are now adjourned.